Hello, my name is Stephen Williams, and the title of my research paper is Water Crimes and Justice, a History of the Federal Enforcement of Laws Fighting Water Pollution. So the goals of this research paper are listed here. One of them was to cover how our federal government became involved in enforcing crimes related to our environment and water pollution. I covered the history of how federal agencies came to be, such as the Public Lands Division, the first governmental agency with the responsibility of protecting our environment and water. I covered Environmental and Natural Resources Division and the cases that they work on today, such as the Salt Lake City case. And I also covered some examples of how ineffective federal enforcement of these laws can be, such as the pollution of the Delmarva Peninsula and also Reagan-era budget cuts. So for the Public Lands Division and the ENRD, I showed how the Public Lands Division, with the expansion of the country, its duties also expanded greatly as well. And these expansions gave way to, today, what we know as the Environmental and Natural Resources Division. I gave some examples of the responsibilities that this agency handles today, such as the ship captain who traveled to the U.S. from Philippines, who did not properly sanitize his bilge waste. I gave example of how this agency utilizes the Clean Water Act, and also the Salt Lake City case. This case was about Salt Lake County and how they did not properly utilize their runoff sewage treatment, and how the ENRD prosecuted them and won. For some examples of the ineffectiveness of federal government and their enforcement, I talked about the Reagan-era budget cuts and the effect that they had on how effective the federal government was when dealing with pollution and crimes against our environment. And the idea that when you have a federal agency enforcing something, it is completely funded by the federal government, and there will always be something that will be deemed more critical within the federal government. So that's a downfall of having a federal agency be responsible for enforcing pollution and water crimes and crimes against the environment. I also cited the poultry farms in Maryland and their pollution of the Delmarva Peninsula, and how the federal government did not step in and take responsibility for this. Rather, the state government had to step in and do something. So this is a failure. It shows a failure of the federal government's ability to enforce laws and protect our environment. So in conclusion, with as many different issues and as many diverse issues that face the U.S. today, it's not really any surprise that there are both examples of effectiveness when it comes to the federal government and their enforcement of these crimes, and there are also examples of ineffectiveness. But overall, there's a bright future and there's hope for the federal government and their ability to protect our environment and protect our water resources. These are my references.